I call to order the Gladstone City Council work session for April 27th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. per the Governor's Executive Order 20-16 regarding compliance with Oregon's public meeting laws. The City of Gladstone is abiding by social distancing requirements during the coronavirus pandemic. This meeting will be conducted using the Zoom platform. The Zoom access instructions can be found on the meeting agenda. Members of the City Council, staff, and the public all have access to this meeting. The work session is a time for the council and staff to discuss matters openly and informally, and public comment is not part of our agenda and is not allowed. The city upgraded its Zoom software, so it allows us to easily conduct events with a simpler interface in a professional setting. There are two groups of participants, the panelists and the attendees. Panelists are those you will see on the platform, such as elected officials, the city administrator, city attorney, and any staff or person making a presentation. Attendees are those in the audience. Attendees will not be able to speak during this work session. We will not have a consent agenda, business from the audience, or business from the council. The only item to be discussed is the Gladstone Public Works Building Replacement Evaluation. Additionally, if anyone becomes disruptive, we will mute and recess the meeting for 5 minutes. If we are unable to continue, council will briefly meet off air to move unfinished business to the next council agenda. Tonight, as mentioned before, the only thing on our agenda is the Public Works Building Replacement Evaluation. Tammy, could you please call the roll?
Councilor Ripley. Councilor Ripley, I think you're muted.
There we go. I was having a problem unmuting. Yes.
Councilor Alexander.
Yes.
Councilor Tracy.
Here.
Councilor Hartman.
Here.
Councilor Todd.
Here.
Councilor Garlington.
Here.
Mayor Stemple.
Here. Next is the flag salute, which is up in my left corner. Let's all go ahead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for that. Now on to our staff report.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Do you have a copy of your packet with you tonight? Great. Okay, so I'm Jackie Betts. I'm the city administrator. Tonight I have with me our acting public works director, Darren Caniparoli, and our finance consultant, Kathy Brucker. And we want to talk to you tonight about the public works building replacement. This is not a new topic. As you recall, when we had our city council goal setting session in January, we did a presentation to you. You're not receiving any new information except for perhaps what Darren might share since the recent ice storm that we had. But what we're looking for tonight is for you to kind of give us the consensus to keep moving this project forward. Keep in mind, we have no pictures, we have no floor plans, and that's not what you're approving tonight. You're actually going to consider whether or not you want staff to go ahead and move this forward to the next step. We have a brief PowerPoint, and that's only so that as we record this and if members of the community want to go back and watch it, they have an outline of what we talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and have Tammy put that up to show you what we're going to cover tonight.
Can you all see the screen?
Yes. So the items that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk a little bit about the history, the current status, the alternatives researched, and the identified costs as we know them, and then the staff recommendation. As noted in your packet, a little bit of history. The city of Gladstone has been working on this for the past couple of years of working with some initial preliminary designs to bring forward to you. The main building at Public Works was constructed in the mid-70s as a prefabricated metal shop building, and it served as the headquarters of the Public Works Department activities, but it notably had facility challenges. The responsibilities of the Public Works Department have continued to expand significantly over the years, and they've taken a more proactive role in addressing the city's infrastructure needs. As defined in the Clackamas County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan and in Gladstone Resolution number 1167, the Gladstone Public Works Department is identified as a critical facility, critical to government response and recovery activities during and after a natural disaster. And the reason for that is to promote sound public policy designed to protect citizens, critical facilities, infrastructure, private property, and the environment from natural hazards. So with Public Works being responsible for the city's streets, water systems, sanitary sewer system, and stormwater, it's understandable why the Public Works would be listed as a critical facility. They need to be operable and able to respond immediately to the impacts on the city's infrastructure by a natural disaster. When we first gave you this presentation at the council goal setting session, we had no idea on what we were going to endure with the recent ice storm. And so I'm going to have our acting Public Works Director just point out a few deficiencies that we experienced during that event with this facility.
All right, thank you, Jackie. So during the ice storm, like many of us, we were out without power for multiple days. We do have a small backup generator at the site. That generator runs on propane, and it only powers about half of the Public Works facility in whole. Without the power, obviously we had issues with people staying warm during their breaks, taking lunches, no way to warm up food or any of that type of thing while working 24-hour shifts. Staff was actually taking breaks and lunches in their vehicles during the storm event, which, you know, isn't the best way to go about doing that. But when you don't really have much of a choice, that was pretty much all we were left with. Working, 24-hour shifts is, 12 hours on, 12 hours off is pretty taxing on anybody, but not having heat and everything else that was combined with the storm made things rather difficult.
Okay, so Tammy, yes, you're on the correct slide, the current status. So as everyone knows, the city recently constructed a new city hall and police department located next to the existing Public Works building. And because the existing Public Works building is limited in its ability to fulfill its role to the community and city employees as a critical facility, the timing is optimum to replace the building. It will complement the investment made next to the Gladstone Civic Center. The existing Public Works building lacks space for Public Works construction meetings and development planning meetings. It has no public restrooms and no sufficient office space for the employees. Staff has temporarily utilized the non-ADA compliant modular unit that was moved on site in 2016. In 2016, it was a temporary structure, and that is what we're still using for offices there today. Next, Tammy. So the alternates researched and identified, we started with a needs assessment conducted by McKinsey Group in 2017. They evaluated the current and future needs of the Public Works Department and came to the conclusion that facility needs are insufficient for the current staff, pointing out the necessity for restrooms, coordination meeting rooms, office spaces, lunch rooms, storage space, etc. Then in 2019, the Public Works Department enlisted the services of Northwest Project Services and an architect to evaluate the alternatives that could work to either temporarily or permanently resolve the needs of the departments. Next slide. So these alternatives were made with 4 main goals in sight. The first one is to improve the public works ability to function more efficiently while growing to meet the needs of the community. The second one is to improve the ability for Public Works Department to support their growing staff's facility needs. The third is to improve the Public Works Department ability to perform as a critical facility base during a natural disaster. And the fourth is to improve the Public Works Department facility street view image in a way that would complement the new Gladstone Civic Center. Next. So we came up with 4 alternatives. The first one is to remodel the interior and exterior of the existing facility in 3 phases. The second is to remodel the interior and exterior of the existing facility in a single phase. The third option is to completely replace the existing facility with a new structure. And the fourth option is to remodel just a minimal portion of the existing building exterior. We also have the different costs associated with each alternative. And in your handout, there are a list of pros and cons for each alternative. I wasn't planning on going through all of the pros and cons tonight, as you have had these before. It is published on the city's website. Unless, Mayor, you would like us to go through all of the pros and cons for each alternative.
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. So in the next slide, staff recommendation is that we're recommending to replace the existing facility with a new structure. And before we go forward with that a little bit, I'm going to have Kathy Brucker go over how the city would be able to finance this project.
Back in December of 2020, we contacted our financial advisor, was Carol Samuels with Piper Sandler. And they put together some numbers for us at that time for a total of $4 million with $75,000 approximately in closing costs. The interest rates that were prevalent at that time were increased by 1 percentage point to give us a bit of a cushion in case rates do come up that way. But rates have held quite steady. So I do think these are probably more or less worst case scenarios on the numbers. What we had anticipated to do, we asked for a term of either a 10-year payoff, a 15-year payoff, or a 20-year payoff. With 10% of the cost being absorbed by the General Fund Parks Department and 22.5% of the cost being absorbed equally by roads, water, sewer, and storm. So it would be allocated out amongst those 5 departments there. And what the cost came out to be at that time, and as I say, is this also too, you had seen it at the council retreat, but it came out to be an estimated total cost of, as including all interest, of $5,911,656. General fund would be allocated $29,558 per year. This is on a 20-year term. And then all other departments would be at $66,506 debt service per year. Because of the longevity of the building and the life of that building, we could easily go a 20-year term, on a rational basis there. We could go as short as 10-year, but of course then the annual debt service does go up. we would have the ability to structure that at any time once we get into budget and we look at that a little closer. But they definitely are doable costs as far as Jackie said on here, no new taxes are proposed. This could be absorbed within the budget.
And I think that because we're recommending that we replace the facility with a new structure, just for the public record, I want to highlight what the pros are for doing that. The pros would be for that is the existing facility would be demolished and a new facility would be constructed to current codes for the new construction. It would be much easier and fewer surprises to accomplish the critical facility standards with all new construction. The final footprint could be changed as needed, as it's not limited to the existing building layout. Matching the style of the new Civic Center next door would be easily accomplished, and the usable life of the new facility would likely be longer than for a remodeled facility. Because the city is in good standing with their credit worthiness, and because the city has just completed the successful progressive design build with the Gladstone Civic Center, we believe that it's optimal time to move this forward, which would require a vote of the community, because in our charter, we have measures 395 and measures section 49 that states if the city is going to build or construct anything over $1 million, then it has to have voter approval, which I think the city council is a strong proponent of. So with that, we also put a copy of a public outreach proposal in your packet. We would retain Barney and Worth to help us with the public outreach if the city council gives us the consensus to move this forward. The next steps would be to work with the city attorney on getting a ballot measure title ready. And we would bring that to you at the July city council meeting for approval, and then work through the election timing to get that on the November ballot. So with that, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
All right, I'm sure people have questions, so I'm going to call you guys individually to make sure everyone has a chance. I'll start with Councilor Tracy Todd.
So with the numbers that you're talking with option 3, are we looking at a progressive design build type scenario? Is that those numbers are with that type of a thing?
Those numbers aren't related to any type, whether it's design build or progressive design. And the other thing that we want to caution too is that the market is only going up in cost. So that's why we put a range here of that. The progressive design worked well for this building because we hired the architect and the contractor at the same time. And there was some valued engineering in doing that. But that necessarily doesn't have to be decided tonight. That's something that we could talk about as we go through the process.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilor Alexander.
I have no questions.
All right, Councilor Tracy.
So Jackie, we're talking about the administrative building only, correct? Do we have sufficient, are the other buildings sufficient for the utility that they're designed and constructed for as well?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
Yes,
so
yeah.
those buildings are newer, right? The sheds, the tool sheds, the tractor sheds, they're newer. Is that correct?
yes, that is correct.
Okay. Other than that, I guess the only question I have is you got the debt service here levied, the allocations coming out of the general fund, and the other departments are all, obviously allocated, but were they built into a budget at one point in time, Jackie, or are you talking about building the budget so that those allocations are coming from these other funds? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is who's losing by the allocations coming from the other funds?
All those other funds, they would be
Water,
they would be
storm,
sewer
sewer,
Okay.
and roads.
and roads, but
Right.
not other general fund funds, only the parks general fund.
Mhm.
Okay, so what I'm asking for, I guess, is there an earmark there for keeping this building, the building that we have currently, in serviceable shape? Or are these monies that are coming from, you know, I mean, are we diverting these monies from something else that might need to be done? I mean, that's a question I think anybody in the city would ask.
Yes.
Okay.
So go ahead.
It would be a reduction of the capital improvement funds available.
Thank you.
with
That's
those
what I was
funds.
looking for. So
Yes.
we have CIP, and that these monies would be coming out of there, Kathy. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we're not,
Uh-huh.
obviously, in the allocation, we're not taking money out of different streams. So,
Right.
okay, thank you.
All right, Counselor Hartman.
Thank you, Mayor. The only question I had, do you, in your professional opinion, do you think that the facility meets OSHA standards? Or is at any moment, are we at risk of getting violations on the building?
You want me to answer that on a recorded public meeting?
Well, so why I brought that up and why I just kept thinking about it is that, you know, I understand that we want it to match the facade of the Civic Center, but on like a private citizen side, like I really want our community to understand like that our public works really needs this. And, you know, they really need this to happen and not necessarily talk about it matching like how pretty it looks. And that was really just my only like suggestion and thought and why I asked that question, because I just want them to know that we really do need this and you all need this so that we can have quality service to the community.
No, and I will answer it in a workaround for you and share that the building is deplorable.
Yeah.
They have one bathroom. It's not ADA compliant. We do have concerns with that. That's part of the public outreach is to even encourage people to come and tour it to see for themselves that it is deplorable working conditions over there. So your point is well taken. Yes.
And that was all. So thank you.
All right, Counselor Ripley.
You know, I think if you compared Public Works building to our old city hall, our old city hall is a million times better than that building. But when you started out talking about how emergency services kind of depend on Public Works. And I tell you, after 28 years at the fire station, we use Public Works all the time. And that is an emergency facility, and it should look just the same as the police station and fire station. It needs to be a top of the line facility. So I think option 3, I like that. Knock that whole thing down and get something in there that will make us more productive while we're working and make people want to come to work. Because I don't know why anybody would want to go to work and show up at that building. It's horrible. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Counselor Garlington.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Are we not asking for taxes because there's no room for it in our tax base?
This would be a component of the existing tax base. So if we ask for new taxes, that would have to be an increase in a property tax, a new local option tax or something.
Yeah, it would have to be a low. We are already
Debt service.
collecting our full property tax rate.
Okay,
So we would have to go out for a local option levy or a bond. And our goal was not to impose a new tax on the taxpayers in Gladstone.
okay. And then what is the cost of the building itself versus the interior of the building?
I don't have the cost breakdowns for that yet. I'm not even sure if we're at that point yet where we can differentiate what the costs are.
Okay, that's a little bit concerning to me because when I'm looking at, and I understand this is not, I understand when you said that this is not exactly what they're looking for. This doesn't look like a work building to me. This looks like an office building to me. So I'm a little bit concerned with how much money is being spent on the inside of this building versus, not versus, but is this needed? I'm just trying to be a little bit financially responsible here to our taxpayers and asking them for money. And while I understand that we need this new building and I am all for option 3, don't get me wrong. I am a little bit concerned about this look, the inside, what I'm looking at right now is an office building. It's not a working space. I work in a working space. I know what they look like. This is not it. So that being said, and then I was wondering how much the public outreach is going to cost.
I believe it's $24,000 for the public outreach piece. That's the quote that we got for the items that are in your packet.
Okay. So I'm kind of torn on that one as well. I think while I understand that public outreach is needed, I think that in some of the past buildings that we've done, the public outreach has been really good, but what it really reaches, how many people it really reaches and how many people really engage, I kind of question the amount of money that we have spent thus far on those. I'm not questioning, I'm just questioning the effectiveness of it. You know, we had the library, and although we had a lot of people coming, it was really about 100 people out of 10,000 citizens. So I'm just wondering, I mean, $24,000 is a lot of money when you're talking about cutting everybody's budgets. And I'm questioning whether or not that's really a needed component of this, or that if we cut this down to about $3 million and became very minimalist on the inside, maybe adding later after the building is up and we have one public works office and some really nice bathrooms and some general workspace and a general lunchroom with all of the emergency necessary backup stuff, but certainly not 13 rooms. I think that I would like to see this, to see if we could come up with a little bit less necessary money. Let's talk about that. That's all.
All right, thank you. I had a couple of questions. First is, as far as essential facilities go, the only one that we have right now is police department. Is that correct?
The police department is critical facilities, and some could argue whether the fire department was converted when it did the remodel to a critical facility.
Okay, so that's, we don't know yet if that one's true. So then we'll just have the new public works and the police station for sure.
Correct.
Okay. The 3.5 to 4 million, is that the build cost or is that all of the costs?
That is all of the costs.
Including what we've spent on it so far?
No, not including
Okay.
what we've spent on it so far.
Jackie, that would, there would be an increase in costs as far as the financing. So, you know, they estimated if we borrowed 4 million, it would be a total cost of about 5.9.
That's correct. Yes, and we also have the inflationary cost
Yes.
included in that as well.
Okay, so then we're gonna actually be going out for $5.9 million.
That would be the amount we would repay. Would
Okay.
be 5.9. We would be bonding for the principal of approximately 4 to 4.1 million.
But because of that ballot measure, would we have to claim the full 5.9 since that's truly what we're spending?
Well, I don't know in relation to the ballot measure, Mayor, but we would want to obviously make it clear as far as what the anticipated principal and interest costs would be in total on the borrowing.
Okay, I know people are gonna watch it closely. I just want to make sure that we do it right. And Councillor Garlington made a statement about wanting to go minimalist on the inside and maybe add later. Well, I think those that have lived here for a long time know the history of Gladstone and how we do everything to the minimum. thinking we're gonna catch up later and we just never catch up. So I think doing it 100% from day one would be the smart path. And we know it's gonna be done in our lifetime. I think that was the only questions that I had. So what you need from us is a consensus to go ahead. Oh, Counselor Ripley.
Yeah, are these plans like including the 50-year growth for Gladstone so that we aren't outgrowing a building? Because that's usually what it seems to do. You build a building and we keep growing and we need more employees, and next thing you know, it doesn't fit. So is that counting that growth period for the
Yes.
building?
Yes, and that's the standard now with the new civic buildings is a 50-year rate that you grow to. And yeah, so one counter on the public outreach to Councillor Darlington's point is that because this is a ballot measure and because Gladstone does not have staff to handle public outreach and communication, that's why we think it's important so that people understand what they are voting on and why. We want to make sure we have clear language that's been approved by the Secretary of State's office. And that is why we've put in a proposal to do the public outreach. Staff cannot advocate for or against a project. If you move this forward in July to go on the ballot, staff can no longer do any work on this. And so having that public outreach firm would really support the city council. Then it's got to be the one to deliver that message.
Okay, anybody else have any? Counselor Hartman.
Thank you. I just had a quick thought, and I know they're not very fun, but are grants going to be taken into consideration for this, given that the building has maybe some OSHA needs, like if there's some infrastructure build outs or whatnot, are those being considered at all?
Yeah, and so the next, and we have to take this in steps, but the short answer, yes. If it's approved on the November ballot, then that's a chance for staff to really assess what kind of monies might be available before we go out and borrow. And maybe that's a way that we do get it down to 3 million instead of the 5.9 million. So we will be looking at all of those opportunities, especially with the infrastructure projects that we're expecting to come out for that. So yes.
Thank you.
Counselor Tracy.
So Jackie, what I'm understanding then is your recommendation is go on the 20-year time horizon. Is that correct for carrying the debt service?
Yes, that is correct.
And is it because it would, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm just asking because is there a feeling that would overburden the budget to try to trim that up and save that $1.4 million in the long run? I mean, what, sorry, go ahead, Kathy, sorry.
I was just going to say, on a 10-year term, it would be projected to be 1,067,000, excuse me, a total cost of about 4,744,000 on a 20-year 5.9. The debt service changes, though, on a 10-year term would be 47,450 in the general fund and 106,762 to the other departments. On a 20-year term, as I was saying, it's just under 30,000 in the parks and 66,500 in the other funds. Again, once we had a firmer idea on what the interest rates were, this is all pretty much an estimate. But once, if we go back to our financial advisor, find that the rates are in better shape, then we would possibly be able to shorten the term on that, absolutely. Also, too, at that point in time, we'll be into our new biennium budget, and that will be approved, and we'll have those numbers finalized there. And then finally, as Jackie was saying, we will certainly be looking for any other forms of revenues coming in that we could offset some of these costs with, whether it be grant revenues or some other type of source.
And we may want to split it and go to 15 years instead of the 10 or the 20. And
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I'm sorry, Jackie, I agree with that. Looking at every avenue you can to trim down the debt service. I just don't, again, I was kind of going back to if you feel like those other allocations are overburdened out of those budget lines, is that the reason we're looking at the longer horizon? And you just answered it, Kathy, so, and Jackie, so thank you. The other thing I'm gonna go ahead and throw in with Randy Ripley, if that's a clear span, and I think it is a clear span, steel sided building, Darren, is that correct? The existing
Yes.
building?
That is
I mean,
correct.
yeah, I mean, that really, those buildings, 20-year life cycle, right? 20-year lifespan, maybe 30 years at best, if you're really treating it well. If it was built in 70, right, it was really ready to be replaced in 95. And so, I mean, we've got, what, 50 years out of a building that really wasn't designed to last as long as it has. Am I incorrect about that, Darren?
No, you're right on.
So, you know, I mean, we're going to get to the point where your efficiencies just in that building alone are going to start to eat us alive. Maybe not as, obviously not as heavily, because it's just not a large building, but I mean, it's going to still take its toll if it's not doing it already. So thank you for this. I like the presentation. Thank you.
Counselor Todd.
Can you remind me how many FTEs we have in Public Works?
2 seconds. I have the note in my office. I apologize. Okay, we have currently 16 and a half FTEs at Public Works, and then the budget also covers our water utility clerk too. That as far as physically located out of Public Works, it's 16 and a half, and that will be theoretically, hopefully growing slight bit with the new biennium.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Hartman.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I just thought of one other thing. I know that if we went with number 3, you have to move the operations. Have we thought about where that we would have to move that? And is that estimate cost if we have to do rent or anything involved in that budget as well?
I believe it is in that total cost. And yes, we will have to relocate, but we'll relocate on site.
Oh, okay.
We'll move to the back half of the property to be able to still run operations from the site.
Awesome. Thank you.
Counselor Garlington.
So right now that facility that you're in is an actual working facility, am I right? There's different things that you do in there on a day-to-day basis that require space, working space. I saw the signs were stored in there and things like that.
So in the actual building, we have a lunchroom that's now taken over with cubicles for supervisors. We have another office. We have a locker room area that has lockers for everyone. And then the main shop area, what used to be the main shop area, is now kind of converted into a lunchroom for staff there on one side. And then on the far side of the building, it's basically storage, indoor heated storage for vehicles that can't sit outside, that are ready to go at the drop of a hat, be a water leak or a sewer leak or anything like that. The main outbuilding, or the main modular that's sitting there, that houses the operations part for secretary, admin assistant, my office, a meeting room in there that's not really large. You can get maybe 7 to 8 people around a table at best.
Before COVID.
Before COVID, yes.
So, and the square footage of this building as opposed to the one that you currently have, difference?
I believe they're very similar as far as square footage is concerned.
So where will you be moving your workspace to?
So the workspace will move to the back part of the lot. We have the old evidence room that's back there that currently half the staff is utilizing that with the COVID stuff, with the social distancing. The plan will be we'll probably end up moving all staff into that as far as for a lunchroom and break area. And then the thought would be then to possibly bring in another modular that would have restroom facilities, shower facilities, locker room facilities, and then taking the existing modular and moving it to the backside so that we can continue to have office space.
And that would all be removed once you moved into this new building?
Correct.
Well, not, the evidence
But-
building is permanent.
Yes. The modular units would go away.
Mindy, you should go take a tour, all of you. I'm sure
I've
Darren
been
would
in
love
there.
to show you the
I've been
beauty
in
of
there.
Public Works. All right, any other questions? Counselor Hartman.
All right, one more. Thank you. I wanted to piggyback off of Councilor Garlington. So this building won't have any of those locker room showers or any of those things. This is just purely an office space.
No, it will need to have, they have hazardous materials that they deal with, whether it's in the sewer manhole. So they are required to have showers and locker rooms at OSHA standards for that.
Right, but it would be in this design, or did I hear that it would be in the back where the evidence room?
No, it would be in the design of the new facility.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification.
Counselor Todd.
Just clarify for public record, all the options except for just the number 4 minimal portion is going to have to go to the voters to approve regardless, right? So people will have their say, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
But we're only moving one option forward,
Yeah.
correct? We're not giving people the choice.
We're recommending that we replace the existing structure. That's the
Okay.
guidance that we need from the council. And then we would continue to move this forward and bring back the ballot title language with all the specifics for you to look at in July.
Okay, so then you need a consensus from us for option number 3. So I'm going to ask everybody a yay or a nay on moving option number 3 forward for ballot language creation. Counselor Hartman,
Yay.
Counselor Todd,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Ripley,
Yes.
Counselor Tracy,
Aye, yes.
Mayor Stemple, yes. So yes, please, thank you. Move forward with option number 3. All right, so I think that was it for the meeting tonight. Anything else from staff?
Nope, that's all that we have. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, so I want to remind everybody, we have the city budget meeting, May 3rd at 6:30 via Zoom. And May 11th is our regular city council meeting, again, 6:30 via Zoom. I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion was made by Counselor Garlington and seconded by Counselor Hartman to adjourn the meeting. Any further discussion? I don't see anything. Tammy, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Ripley,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Tracy,
Aye.
Counselor Hartman,
Aye.
Counselor Todd,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Mayor Stemple.
Yes, meeting's adjourned at 7:13 PM. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.